spend, and hope for the best. But here's what I learned. The amount you start with matters far less than the strategy, patience, and discipline you bring to it. This story matters because it proves that even if all you have is $100, you can plant that seed, nurture it, and watch it grow into something far bigger than you imagined. The transformation isn't just financial, it's mental. You stop thinking like a spender and start thinking like an investor. That mindset shift is the true return on investment. Once you realize you can multiply even a small amount, you'll never see money or opportunity the same way again. 2. The $100 moment. This $100 wasn't just some random bill lying around. I earned it from birthday gift, a few weeks of saving, a small side gig, and at first I thought about spending it like I usually would. Maybe on a nice dinner, a new pair of shoes, or a night out with friends. That's how money usually flowed through my hands. In, then out, with nothing lasting to show for it. But then I paused and asked myself a different question. What if I didn't let this $100 vanish in a day? What if I treated it like a seed, something I could plant, nurture, and grow into something much bigger? That was the exact moment my mindset shifted. I stopped seeing it as just paper with numbers printed on it and started seeing it as a tool, a starting point. It wasn't about the size of the amount anymore. It was about the potential it represented. I realized $100 could be the spark for a project, the capital for a tiny business, or the first investment in my own skills. That shift in thinking turned a single bill into the beginning of an entirely new chapter. The research phase. My rule was simple. I wouldn't spend a single dollar until I knew exactly what I was doing. No guessing, no, let's just see what happens. I treated it like a mission. That meant long nights spent watching tutorials, reading books on business and investing, and diving deep into online forums where people shared their wins, losses, and hard-learned lessons. I became obsessed with spotting patterns, which strategies worked for others, which failed miserably, and most importantly, why. I learned how timing could make or break a result. I started narrowing my focus to ideas that didn't require massive startup costs, but still offered serious upside potential. This wasn't just casual browsing, it was active, structured research. I had pages of notes, pros and cons lists, revenue projections, and tiny calculations scribbled in the margins. I wanted something where the risk was low enough to start small, but the ceiling was high enough to dream big. I wasn't just looking for an investment, I was hunting for the right one. And yes, there was a ridiculous amount of coffee involved. Every late-night study session brought me one step closer to the decision that would change everything. 4. The risk check. Before I jumped in, I forced myself to step back and think through every possible thing that could go wrong. Could the market shift overnight and wipe out my opportunity? Could I invest in something nobody actually wanted? Could I make a rookie mistake and see my entire $100 vanish in a week? I wasn't going to let excitement blind me to reality. So I sat down and made a list. Every risk, every failure scenario I could imagine. At first, it was intimidating. The list was longer than I expected, and seeing it on paper made me question whether I was ready at all. But as I read through it again, something clicked. The worst-case scenario wasn't really that bad. I asked myself the ultimate question. If I lose this $100, can I live with it? The answer was yes. It would sting, sure, but it wouldn't ruin me. That realization shifted everything. It turned fear into focus. Once I accepted the potential loss, it freed me to take the shot without hesitation. That's when I committed, not halfway, not tentatively, but fully, to seeing this through no matter what happened next. 5. Making the first move. After weeks of research, the opportunity was finally clear. I decided to invest my $100 into flipping items, as a promising stock, a digital tool to start a side hustle. This wasn't a random pick or a let's see what happens gamble. It ticked every box on my list. Low cost of entry, high potential upside, and most importantly, it was something I genuinely understood. I knew the market, I knew the demand, and I knew the steps I'd take to turn that $100 into more. I wasn't operating on blind hope. I had a plan. I knew what I was buying, why I was buying it, and exactly how I intended to profit from it. So, I took a deep breath, pulled the trigger, and made my first purchase. My $100 was no longer just sitting in my wallet. It was out in the world, working for me. That moment was thrilling and terrifying all at once. For the first time, I had skin in the game. And with the money out of my hands, the hardest part began: the waiting, the patience, and the discipline to let the process play out. 6. The waiting game. The first week was brutal. Every morning, I'd grab my phone or log into my account, hoping for a sign, a sale, a price jump, something to prove I'd made the right call. But the numbers didn't move. No progress, no change, just silence. That's when the doubts started creeping in. Maybe I chose the wrong opportunity. Maybe I should have gone with one of the other ideas I researched. I even caught myself hovering over the withdraw button, thinking about pulling my money out just to feel safe again. But here's the thing. This is the exact moment where most people fail. They quit before their investment even has a chance to breathe. It's like planting a seed and digging it up the next day to check if it's growing. I reminded myself, you made this decision for a reason. You did your homework. Now trust the process. That single choice, to stay in the game instead of bailing out early, became one of my biggest advantages. It taught me that patience isn't just a nice trait in investing, it's a weapon. And in that quiet, uncomfortable waiting period, my $100 was quietly getting ready to move. 7. First signs of life. Then one morning it happened. I logged in, expecting the usual, flat numbers, no movement. But this time, something was different. There it was, my first real result, a profit of about $30. Now, $30 might not sound like much, but to me, it was proof. Proof that the system I had researched, planned, and committed to was working. My $100 wasn't just sitting there anymore. It was growing, moving, multiplying. Most people would have cashed out right then, treated themselves to a nice meal or a small splurge, and called it a win. But I saw it differently. This wasn't my payday. This was my fuel. Every dollar I took out now was a dollar that couldn't keep working for me, couldn't keep multiplying. So instead of celebrating with a purchase, I reinvested every cent right back into the process. That single decision, to let the money keep cycling instead of cutting it short, was the moment the snowball really started rolling. From here on out, the game wasn't just about earning, it was about compounding. And that's when small wins began stacking into something far bigger. 8. Scaling the system. After that first win, I knew exactly what to do. Repeat the process. No reinventing the wheel, no chasing shiny new ideas. I took my $130 and reinvested it the same way I had before, following the same steps that had just proven themselves. When that turned a profit, I didn't hesitate. I rolled all of it back in again. Each cycle felt like adding another gear to a machine. The more gears I added, the faster and smoother it ran. My $100 became $200, then $400, then $800. Every round wasn't just about bigger numbers, it was about getting smarter. I spotted inefficiencies, streamlined my approach, and cut out anything that wasted time or money. The most powerful realization? I wasn't just making money. I was building a self-sustaining machine. As long as I kept feeding it and fine-tuning it, it would keep producing results. This wasn't luck anymore. This was a system. And systems, unlike one-off wins, can be scaled far beyond their starting point. At that moment, I stopped thinking like someone chasing profit and started thinking like someone running a business. 9. The setbacks. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. For every win, there were mistakes that stung, sometimes badly. I bought inventory that sat on the shelf for weeks, money locked up and unavailable for better opportunities. I jumped on a deal too quickly once, convinced it was a can't-miss moment, only to realize I hadn't checked the details carefully. That misstep cost me nearly half of what I'd invested in that round. At first, these setbacks were frustrating. It felt like slamming into a wall after building so much momentum. I'd ask myself, was this the beginning of the end? But with time, I realized those moments were actually some of my most valuable teachers. They forced me to slow down and double-check my numbers. They reminded me to research every move thoroughly, even if I was excited. And most importantly, they taught me never to let emotion, whether fear or greed, drive my decisions. Those mistakes didn't break my system. If anything, they refined it. Every error became a safeguard for the future, making the machine I'd built not just profitable, but resilient. And resilience, I learned, is the real key to long-term success. 10. Diversifying the approach. Once my profits reached a comfortable level, I started thinking about risk differently. Up until then, I had been pouring everything back into the same system that got me started. But I realized something. If that single stream dried up, all my progress could disappear overnight. One bad market shift, one policy change, one unexpected downturn, and I'd be back at square one. So I made the decision to branch out. I took a portion of my earnings and began testing other opportunities. Some were in the same niche. Safer moves where I already had experience. Others were in completely new areas, chosen for their potential and to spread my risk even further. It worked better than I expected. Even when one income stream slowed down, the others kept things moving forward. Diversifying wasn't just about protecting what I had. It was about discovering new strategies, markets, and tools I never would have considered if I'd stayed in one lane. What started as a single income engine had now become a fleet of them, each running on its own fuel, but all working toward the same goal: building something bigger, stronger, and far more resilient than before. 11. The $100,000 milestone. I'll never forget the exact day it happened. I opened my laptop, typed in my login, and held my breath. I'd been tracking the numbers closely all week, knowing I was on the edge of something big. The dashboard loaded slowly, almost taunting me. And then there it was, 127, staring back at me in bold black numbers. For a second, I just froze. Then my heart skipped a beat and I leaned back in my chair with this ridiculous grin on my face. It wasn't just about the money, though that was incredible. It was about what the number represented. I had built this from scratch. No investors, no rich uncle, no winning lottery ticket, just $100, a plan, relentless research, calculated risks, and more patience than I thought I had in me. I took a screenshot instantly, almost as proof to myself, and sent it to a friend who had once laughed when I told them I wanted to double my money. Their reply came back in seconds. Okay, I'm listening now. That moment wasn't just a financial milestone, it was a personal one. It proved that with the right mindset, even small beginnings can grow into something extraordinary. 12. Proof and transparency. I know the internet is overflowing with wild claims and flashy promises, so I believe in showing the receipts. That's why I'm sharing a peek into my real transaction history, sales charts, and month-by-month growth graphs, with personal details blurred for privacy, of course. You'll notice the ups and downs, the slow months where progress felt almost invisible, the dips that tested my patience, and the breakthrough moments where everything seemed to click. This journey hasn't been a straight climb, and that's exactly the point. It's authentic. I want to be crystal clear. This isn't some get-rich-quick fairy tale. It's more of a get skilled, then get consistent reality. Every sale, every jump in numbers came from hours of learning, testing, and refining my approach. If you commit to improving your skills and showing up consistently, the numbers don't just appear. They compound over time. 13. Breaking down the numbers. Here's exactly how it unfolded. The first $500 took me 2 months, and honestly, most of that came from trial, error, and figuring out what didn't work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a necessary learning curve. By month 4, I'd hit $2,000, which felt like a huge breakthrough. That's when I decided to reinvest more aggressively instead of just pocketing the profits. By month 7, I reached $5,000, and that milestone was a game changer. I had systems in place, my strategies were sharper, and I was starting to see patterns I could repeat. The final leap to $100,000 came faster than I imagined. Just 2 more months. Thanks to compounding profits and scaling the methods that were already working. When I break it down, roughly 35% of revenue came from my first method, 45% from my second, and the rest from smaller experiments that, while modest, were still profitable. Diversifying didn't just protect me. It sped everything up, lessons you can use. If you're thinking of starting with just $100, here's what I learned. Start small, but start smart. Don't just throw money at something because it sounds exciting. I spent 3 weeks studying my niche before spending a dime. That's what saved me from losing everything in the first month. Reinvest profits. My first $30 profit could have bought me a nice dinner. Instead, I put it straight back into the system, which led to $90, then $250. That snowball effect doesn't happen if you cash out too soon. Patience beats hype. I watched people jump on trends and burn out while my slow, steady approach kept building. There's nothing glamorous about waiting, but it works. Learn the skill, not just the trade. The 10K is nice, but the fact that I now have a repeatable skill set means I can do it again, and again, and again. Money can be spent. Skills pay forever. 15. What I'd do differently. If I could rewind and start from day one, the very first change I'd make is tracking my metrics daily. Not just how much I earned, but exactly what actions led to those earnings. That level of detail reveals patterns and mistakes faster than memory ever could. I'd also run much smaller tests before committing big chunks of capital. I learned this the hard way. I once put nearly half my budget into a single product that completely tanked. It wasn't just a financial hit, it was a mental setback that could have been avoided with a $50 trial run. Another thing? I'd seek out a mentor sooner. Having someone who's been where you want to go isn't just motivational. It can literally cut your learning curve in half by steering you away from costly dead ends. The faster you identify winning actions, the faster you can scale with confidence. 16. The bigger picture. This journey wasn't just about turning $100 into 1,000. It completely reshaped how I think about money, risk, and growth. Before, I saw cash as something to spend, something that left my hands quickly. Now, I see it as fuel. A resource I can put to work to create bigger opportunities. That shift in perspective was transformative. The confidence boost was massive too. When I started, the idea of putting $500 into something felt terrifying. Now, I look at projects that might need $1,000, $5,000 or more, and I don't freeze up. Instead, I break it down into the same process I used before. Start small, prove it works, then scale up. It's no longer about guessing. It's about executing with a plan. Honestly, that mindset shift was worth more than the 10K itself because it unlocked the ability to chase far bigger goals without fear holding me back. What you can do with $100. Think of $100 as a seed, not just money, but potential energy waiting to be planted. That single bill could be the starting point for dozens of different ventures. You might flip items from thrift stores or garage sales for a profit, launch a small online store with just a handful of products, or offer a digital service that requires only your time and skills. You could try micro-investing, turning small contributions into steady growth, or even buy a skill course that pays you back for years in new opportunities. The possibilities are endless, but here's the real secret. Choose something you understand and enjoy. 18. Challenge to the viewer. I've got a challenge for you, and it's not just hypothetical. Take a few minutes today and think of one real, actionable way you could invest $100 this month. I'm not talking about buying a lottery ticket or hoping for a miracle. I mean something tangible. Something you could realistically double in value over time if you put in the effort. Maybe it's flipping items, starting a side hustle, learning a skill you can monetize, or testing a small business idea. The key is that it has to be doable and strategic. Once you've got your idea, drop it in the comments. I'll read every single one, and the most creative yet realistic ideas will get featured in an upcoming video. Final motivation and CTA, the real hero of the story. That first $100 is just a tool. It's not the hero of the story. You are. The real power isn't in the money itself, but in the decisions you make with it. That bill is simply the seed. You're the one who decides whether it gets spent, saved, or planted in a way that multiplies over time. What you choose to do with it, that's the real game changer. Start today. Start small, but above all, start smart. Learn before you leap, test before you commit, and stay consistent when progress feels slow. Every big success story starts with a moment just like this, a decision to act. If this gave you value, hit subscribe for more step-by-step breakdowns, proven strategies, and real-world examples you can follow. Your journey doesn't have to wait, and I'll be right here to walk you through it in the next one. So that's it. $100 turned into $10,000. Not because I'm special, but because I gave that money a purpose. You have the same tool in your pocket. The only question is, will you let it sit or will you put it to work? If you're ready, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs the push, and drop your $100 plan in the comments. I might turn the best ones into the next success story on this channel. The clock's ticking. Your move.